Hello there.
Okay, I found this one in the kitchen. No idea what it's about. Oh, and it says book one.
Well, it looks like it's book one of five, and it even starts off in a farm kitchen.
So it's a cookbook of sorts. I guess I can go hunt down something else.
Hang on, Nix. This is an adventure story. Lots of traveling, fighting, mysteries, kings and sorcerers.
And it starts in a kitchen.
Pawn of Prophecy by David Eddings was published in 1982 and begins with Garion growing up in the farm kitchen with his Aunt Paul. Um, there are actually a lot of characters in this series. Can we get some visual references to go with? Thanks. Okay, so over the course of the first few chapters, Garion grows up under the watchful eye of his Aunt Paul. She runs the kitchen on the farm.
Sounds easy enough.
You'd think so, but there are some 60-odd people working there who need fed 3, sometimes 4 times a day. The other parental-ish figure in Garion's life is Dernick the blacksmith. Together they raise Garion to be a good Sendar, practical in every way and a firm non-believer in any kind of magic.
That sounds so boring.
And that's why we're speedrunning that. That, and we don't really have time for when Garion's friend broke his arm and the Shadowless Man did nothing, or when Dernick saved Garion from drowning and the Shadowless Man did nothing. But we do need to talk about the storyteller, Mr. Wolf.
No. Shadowless Man, what?
We'll come back to that later. See, Mr. Wolf appears now and then to tell amazing stories. Usually they're historical, but sometimes they are about the mysterious Orb of Alder and Belgariad, the sorcerer.
The what and the who?
We'll come back to that later.
I feel like I should be making notes.
Okay, if it makes you feel better. But Garion's quiet life comes to an end with a visit from Mr. Wolf. The old man is frustrated and worried and asks for Paul's help to find a thief that stole something important.
But
there's a very suspicious farmhand eavesdropping on them. Mr. Wolf goes to deal with him, but the farmhand, Brill, tries to attack him. Dernick steps in and knocks him out. They do leave that night, though neither Dernick nor Garion really know what they're setting out to do.
okay, so Dernick and Paul aren't married, right? So why is he going?
To protect Paul, half the whole farmhand side quest is so Dernick comes along. This search for the mysterious thief could be dangerous.
The thief that doesn't have a shadow?
No, not yet.
But
The story is written from Garion's perspective. We only know as much as he does. So very soon they meet 2 more people who join them on their quest. Barrack, a Cherak warrior, and Silk, the Drasnian spy, merchant, smart aleck, and acrobat. The 6 disguise themselves as wagoneers as they travel to Port City, searching for the thief's trail. Garion learns many things on this journey,
like who the no shadow guy is?
You're really hung up on that.
Who doesn't have a shadow?
That guy. Anyway, Silk begins teaching Garion the Drasnian secret language.
The
It's like sign language, but pretty much only using fingers, so it's more sneaky. He also begins teaching Garion some of the basic tenets of economics and trade. It's something to do as they travel from town to town, dodging Murgos.
Murgos?
Okay, I guess we can go ahead and answer that question now.
Finally!
The world was created by 7 gods. 6 of them chose a people group to care for, and 1 chose to be alone. Torak chose the Angarax, which included the Murgos. Alder was alone and created a magical orb while his chosen disciples studied the world, basically inventing science. Torak wanted the Orb of Alder and stole it. The kingdoms went to war to retrieve the orb, and Torak was losing. In a final desperate move, Torak raised the orb and used its power to crack the very foundations of the world, creating an ocean and killing millions. In retaliation, the orb burned Torak's left side. Torak kept the orb for centuries, until Belgarath and some Alorns stole it back. For the Murgos and the Alorns, it was hate at first sight, and that hatred just grew as the Alorn kingdom was split in order to protect the orb. The Alorn kingdom became the kingdoms of Cherek, Drasnia, Algaria, and Riva.
Now someone has stolen the orb, and they're about to go to war again.
Maybe.
I hate you.
Again, this book is written from Garion's perspective. He has suspicions, but doesn't know anything for sure.
You're mean.
Eventually, our heroes ditch the wagon disguise and strike out on horseback. The thief did not pass through the towns that they had already searched, but Murgo's and sometimes Brill were. Finally, they found the trail and began to follow it. Paul chooses their next disguise, and she makes an impression as the Duchess of Erat. No one would really remember them, just a rich, spoiled noblewoman bossing everyone around.
What happened this time?
They were arrested.
I mean, posing as nobility, whatever Silk the Spy is up to.
Actually, they were looking for Mr. Wolf.
The storyteller guy? What for?
Well, they have a military escort all the way to the capital of Sandaria. The Sandarian king seems to know most of them by sight. Beric is actually an Earl of Chirek, and Silk's real name is Prince Keldar.
Keldar.
Don't.
Fine. I'll just think it.
After the feast, Garion does some eavesdropping and hears the king call Mr. Wolf Belgarath and his aunt Paul Polgara.
Belgarath? Like the sorcerer guy? How old?
Like 7,000 years or so. And Polgara is his daughter.
And she was working in a kitchen.
Garion is confused too, and he's feeling very insecure as he fully realizes that he's lost his home and potentially the only family he ever knew.
Oof. Ouch. Wait, out of curiosity, if they aren't related, is Garion a Centaur? I mean, he comes from that country, but she's
About 3,000 years old, and no, Garion isn't Sindarian. Silk thinks he might be Rivan, but he's not 100% sure.
So if he's from Riva, he's an Alorn. Hang on, you're Rivan.
Yeah, I may have picked up my name from these books.
I'm so confused.
Add it to the question list. Anyway, the king of Sandaria wanted Belgarath and Polgara for a council of kings. So full sails to Chirek. Garion, about as frustrated as you, and 14 years old, is beginning his rebellious streak. He's in the prow of their ship as they ride the maelstrom.
The what?
A perpetual whirlpool. Oh, and Garion talks back to Polgara.
Rest in peace, kid.
Belgarath talks Garion through some of what he's feeling, and the kid does apologize, but Garion is still pretty sulky when they reach the snow-covered land. As they travel up to the palace, Garion notices a man in a green cloak meeting
The guy without a shadow? Oh, come on, I have to be right eventually.
Actually, you are right.
And Garion immediately
Says nothing.
What? Why?
He can't. Some strange compulsion in his head won't let him. Instead, he just decides to keep his eyes open for the green cloak guy, just in case. As soon as they arrive in the palace, they meet the kings of Chirek, Algaria, Drasnia, and the Rivan warder.
The what?
The steward, basically. The Rivans have been without a king for a few hundred years. Anyway, they meet the kings and daily councils begin. Not everyone attends, and they find various ways to spend their time, like seeing the ship Beric ordered or hunting boar.
That sounds fun.
Actually, some very important things happen during that hunt. As the hunters are spread out, Garion is alone, so he alone hears a conversation between Green Cloak Guy and a blonde nobleman.
Is the blonde thing relevant?
Actually, yes. It's how he's identified later as a traitor. The conversation Garion overhears explains that Green Cloak Guy is being paid to spy on the council, and that both guys are working with the No Shadow Murgo.
And this time, Garion tells someone.
Well,
No.
he starts to go tell Beric, who's stationed closest, but an angry boar appears. Garion manages to spear it, but the boar catches him with its tusks. Suddenly, Beric is there, fighting the creature with his bare hands. Garion is stunned from a blow to his head, but thought it was almost like Beric was sharing space with a bear.
What?
Garion had a concussion, but it looked like Beric was both man and bear at the same time.
Huh. Weird.
But all of that did give Garion a valid excuse to forget Green Cloak Guy and No Shadow Murgo. But not for too long.
Sheesh. This kid.
A few days later, after recovering from a cracked rib and head, He was exploring the palace alone and discovered Greencloak Guy spying on the king's council. Enough was enough, and he went to find Beric. The man was shut up in his room, convinced he was turning into a monster.
Was he?
Not in the traditional way, but we'll get to that later.
I'm getting really tired of that answer.
Well, if everything was answered now, what's the point of the other 4 books? Garion tells Beric what he had seen and heard, and they rush to the king's council. He told them about Green Cloak Guy, how he snuck around the palace and met blonde noblemen in the woods, and how they'd overheard the kings talking about an ancient enemy waking and all the kingdoms preparing for war. The Chariot King immediately sent warriors to apprehend Green Cloak Guy and his boss. And then Polgara talked to Garion.
He's not in trouble, right?
Well, remember how I said no Shadow Murgo had placed a block in Garion's mind so Garion couldn't tell anyone about him?
Yeah. How did he even do that anyway?
Sorcery. No Shadow Murgo, Asherak is his real name, had been watching Garion for years. Polgara removed the block, also with sorcery, and sent Garion to his quarters to rest. But Asherak was there.
Uh-oh.
Oh yeah, Garion runs. A battle had begun between the Chariot warriors and the traitors' forces. Garion got lost and somehow ended up in a place where he could eavesdrop on the king's council again. The blonde nobleman had been caught. His motivation for betrayal? The red gold Asherak had paid him. The stuff had an almost addictive property. You always want more.
Red gold? Is that like rose gold? You know, the pinkish gold color that you use for jewelry?
No, I think it's just that the gold is red. Anyway, they figure out how to get Garion unlost again and soon wrap up the council. Before leaving Chirek, Polgara, Belgarath, and Garion meet with the Chirek king. Garion is apparently very important, though he doesn't know why, and it has something to do with a mark on his right palm. It's almost perfectly circular and shimmers a bit.
Let me guess. We'll get to that later.
Yep. Book 1 ends with a conversation between Garion and Belgarath. Belgarath tells Garion that a family enemy killed his parents, but doesn't say who it was. And he confirms that Polgara is Garion's aunt, though several greats need to be tacked on. And, as Belgarath is Polgara's father, he is Garion's many more great something grandfather.
Aww, Garion is more family than he thought.
Yeah, but the rest is a story for another day.
Oh, come on, really?
Don't worry, we'll pick up next time with Book 2, The Queen of Sorcery.
Did you make anything to go with this?
Another horse. They're kind of essential for travel.
Aw, I want a horse.
I know. See you next time.